Hi. I think we are starting with Sejal's presentation. Yes. So we're going to start with this is Sejal's lovely book, Superpowers on the Shore. And she has been kind enough to, what is it, condense it and pull out some bits and bobs for everyone to see right now.
So I'll quickly, can you hear? Yeah. So I'll just quickly go through some, it's tough to do this in like a nugget, but just to give you an idea of what it is that coastal wildlife is all about. And then, of course, I'll pass the mic on to Shubhangi and Sarang, and we'll kind of have a conversation around it. But welcome first to the intertidal zone, which literally means between the tides. And if you wonder, and I've been asked this question, that why I've chosen to write about this particular patch of land, an intertidal zone is basically a space which is covered by high tide and revealed at low tide. And everybody's like, why have you written about this really specific, weird space? And the answer to that is that 4 years ago, when I actually did step onto an intertidal zone for the first time, it was because I thought that a couple of marine biologists, some of them are in this room today, had completely collectively lost their marbles. That is the only reason I went, because I was in Bangalore at the time and I was editing a magazine. And there was this conversation about three people who are wandering along Mumbai's coast saying that there is wildlife and we can see them. Now, I've been a Bombay girl my whole life. I know what our shores look like, right? There's plastic, there's pollution, there's sewage, and there's crowds. No self-respecting wildlife in my mind would ever stand for that sort of thing. So I was like, nay, they've seen 2-3 crabs and they're very excited. So it cannot be any, all my journalism cynicism came to the fore. So I was like, nay, bilkul bakwas hai. And then of course, when I came to Bombay, and I went for a walk with Abhishek, who's one of the founders of the Marine Life of Mumbai Collective, I discovered that humble pie, as they say, is positively revolting to eat. Because I found that the coasts of Bombay, and not just Bombay, across the world, our coasts are brimming with wildlife and stories that are yet untold. And through them, I met some creatures with superpowers that I've only now begun to understand. 1 second, let me figure this. Can you guys see this properly? Is it too dull? Do you want to switch off one of those things? Yeah. So basically, an intertidal zone looks like this. These are some of Bombay's shores and one from Goa. And why is it so important to talk about this space? Now think of this as a home. Think of these circumstances. There is harsh sunlight through the day. There's cool moonlight through the night. There's ebb and flow of saline water, twice, 4 times, 5 times geographically, depending where you are. There's predators from the deep, and there's predators from the land. And there is a constant cycle of impermanence. You build a house, the tide comes in, your house is gone. You build a house again, the tide comes in, your house is gone. It's a harsh space. It's tough to live in it. And since the space itself is so unique, it stands to reason that the animals that live here might also be so. Because nowhere else does this happen. In a deep forest, you don't have the ebb and flow of saline water. In very deep water, you don't have harsh sunlight. So it's this very specific condition that happens only in this piece of land. And that's why it's rather special. But having said all these things, it's easy to take the coast for granted, right? If you live in Bombay, the story of our lives is so crazy that we forget that the ocean sits right next to us. And the ocean is familiar, it's constant. It's too familiar, perhaps. Sometimes like a family member is. You look at them after a while and you forget that they have magic. But it's true all the same, right? They're still full of magic. We just don't see it after a while. And that's the truth of a superpower, that it operates in plain sight. It's a little bit like Wizard Among Muggles or Superman and Clark Kent. And if you want to look for its secrets, you have to go close. So I've just put together some creatures that I want to introduce you to. And we'll start with the first stop of a superpower, that's invisibility. Can you guys see? There is a creature on our shores that has done invisibility rather well. In a world that's clamoring for attention, invisibility is a superpower. There's a decorator crab, which kind of has a strange skill. What it does is, you know what Velcro is. It's also called the Velcro crab. What it does it takes with its pincers, it takes little bits of other creatures, like algae, seaweed, seashells, and it puts it on its back. Now, because of that Velcro feeling, those things stick to its back. And it walks around, camouflaged, looking like all the other creatures around it. There's even a species of decorator crab in New Zealand that actually a paper has urged that not only is it a decorator, but it's also a little bit of a dressmaker. Because that particular crab species actually has now found a way to cut and stick things according to patterns that are pleasing. So it's kind of urging you to say that it's not only a tailor, it's also a crab that does finishing really well. And this is Jessica Lewis's illustration, by the way. She's right here. And as I was looking at this crab for the first time, I realized that it's when Hannibal Lecter, and we all know who Hannibal Lecter is, he rips off people, it's a pop culture character. When he rips off somebody's face and puts it on his own to blend into the surroundings, we're all screaming bloody murder. But because of Jessica's beautiful illustration, we look at this creature who is literally walking around the intertidal with little bits and pieces of other animals. It's literally a graveyard. But because of how it looks, thanks to her, we're all looking at it and going, oh, that's cute. That's very, very like blatant favoritism. But I also discovered that if the universe did have a favorite, it made no attempt to hide it. Octopuses, cephalopods, basically squid, nautilus, cuttlefish. These creatures the universe has given pretty much everything to. I think what's the first word that we constantly think of when we think of octopuses, right? We think of aliens. And pop culture kind of draws us into that direction. If you think of the aliens in Arrival, the characters from Futurama, Captain Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean, and even the Stranger Things creature, the Demogorgon, even that has some serious cuttlefish vibes, right? So I think pop culture has also kind of pushed us in that direction. But what really I think attracts us to these animals, it's its ability to think, right? We always read articles about octopuses. Like every time I would put a deadline to my book, somebody would send me an article about something that a cephalopod now can do. The marshmallow test and solving problems and living, like getting outside bottles. And in my mind, I was like, I have to put a deadline because if by the time this book releases, it's discovered that a cephalopod can now like make tea or do garba or something like that, I mean, I just have to let it be. It's not something I can include because every week there was something new that this creature has now devised a plan to do. But during the course of the book, and that's what a book does, right? It also gives you some sort of insight into what you actually think versus what it is. And an octopus researcher called Aditi, she told me that I think what we see as intelligence in octopuses is rather a commonality of species, not really intelligence, because its eye layout is like us, it solves problems like us. That's why we think because it is like us, it is intelligent, because we recognize it, it's relatable. But who is to say that a sea snail who occupies the intertidal zone and actually does it really well is any less intelligent than an octopus, or than us, for that matter? But that's what it does, that's what the human perspective is. And also about the octopus, what you cannot deny is it's amazing because we were talking about invisibility. Its ability to camouflage, right? It fires from 4 cylinders. Chromatophores for color, iridophores for light, papillae for texture, and leucophores for the depth. So it basically uses all of these 4 things and does the most sophisticated camouflage known to mankind. And we actually saw something like, very, very briefly, at Juhu Beach, which is probably one of the most crowded beaches in the city. Okay, one sec. Now, it's going to change color in a few seconds. You'll just briefly glimpse it, but just watch out. Yeah, one second. Now, better? Cool. Okay. Yeah? Let's go. Now, just watch from white. It hits that rock, becomes brown. Did you catch that?
Yes.
And that is at Juhu, guys. I think that's the kind of crazy intertidal that we live next to. That you can just go for a stroll on a beach in Juhu and watch an octopus doing what it does best. I think that is pretty mind-blowing. Also, do you guys know who this is? No, that guy on the left. Wow, I love this group. This is the first time someone said that. They're all like, oh, Deadpool. So that's, of course, a pop culture character who can regenerate. They have not been able to kill him because he just simply grows back. And there are tidal phoenixes on our shore as well, because these animals, sea stars, porcelain crabs with their pincers, some of these creatures can grow back from nothing. Like, we all know that a sea star grows its arm back, but actually a sea star can also grow an entire sea star from just an arm, if there's some tissue left in the oral disc. And there are many animals like that who can regenerate it. Worms do it in the most spectacular fashion. Like, you can cut them up, don't cut them up. But if you did cut them up into many pieces, they'd simply grow back into many different worms. And some species do that, and it's crazy. I think it's also because a lot of these creatures have come from a time that is really old. Like, sea sponges have been here before dinosaurs. So their systems are very basic. So it's like, the less you have inside you to regrow, the more you can do it. So the more powerful you are in terms of regeneration. Ninja assassins also are on our coasts, not just tidal phoenixes. I just want to introduce this amazing, crazy creature to you, which is the cone snail. Now the universe was like, let's make a really cool animal. So what it did is, this cone snail has a little proboscis that you see on the right, again Jess's illustration. This has a harpoon. It usually senses its way across the intertidal with that thing. Now it has a harpoon inside that, which is its tooth. With that harpoon, it kind of shoots its tooth out at a fish, paralyzes it with the venom that's in that harpoon, reels it in, swallows it whole. Now you think, wow, that's pretty cool. But the universe said, wait, I'm going to make it cooler. So what it does is, once it loses that tooth, you know how in those bottle factories, it's on a conveyor belt where one goes and another bottle is in its place? It's exactly like that. The minute it loses the tooth, not the minute, but it can actually grow back a new harpoon laced with venom ready to use. So you think, wow, that's pretty cool, because Hawkeye is like, I can never run out of arrows. And the cone snail will be like, bro, hold my beer, because I can do this much better. But that's not even it. It goes a step further. There are around 500 components to the venom that a cone snail has. And it can actually make venom according to what it wants to do in a little laboratory inside it. So for example, if I want to attack Sukanya, I'll just kind of make a specific venom for her to attack her. But if I want to defend myself from Sukanya, I will make a specific venom for that. So now think about this. It has 500 different species, maybe more, which is around 250,000 different permutations and combinations of venom and neurotoxins, which is why there is no known antidote for this creature. So scientists will tell you, if it's a cone, you leave it alone. That's what it actually looks like on the intertidal. It's rather pretty, but don't wrestle with it. Our shows are portals to some crazy wild animals. Now I want you to observe that thing on the left, and you're going to take a guess on what that is, okay? Just watch. There it comes. There it comes. Ooh. Yeah, that's pretty. What do you think that is? Any guesses will do. Like you can say like a building or something. You can say anything you want. Say anything. Like what do you think it is? Take a wild guess. True, how? But what kind of creature do you think is it? So it's actually, well, close. It's not a plant, though it is a worm. This is a feather duster worm. And the worm actually lives inside that tube that you see, the white thing. It actually lives inside it. And you were actually quite right, because what it does is that fancy headgear that it has is actually there to pull filter, it's filter feeding. It doesn't pull creatures in that sense, but whatever is floating particles, it captures it like that. So it's beautiful, beautiful to see on an intertidal. It does that when the water flows in. Otherwise, you'll just see a tube that looks empty, as we did in the start. On the right, you see our monsoon visitors. That's man-o'-war stingers, aniche, and porpita porpita. Name's so nice, you got to say it twice. I include it in every presentation just to say that line. These will come to Juhu Beach and Girgaon. Actually, all our shores, pretty much every monsoon. So you should go out and look at it. They are venomous, Do not, again, wrestle with these creatures. Look at them from a distance, but do go visit them because they come in large numbers just before the monsoon, and they are glorious. Perspective changes the game. This is very simple. I think the intertidal teaches us a lot about life. It's about where you're standing and what you're looking at, but it's about where you're standing. So you see these things, the blue kind of carpet that I'm sitting on? When you look at it from a distance, that's what it looks like. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. You go a little bit closer to it. That's what it looks like. Now, the magic. When the water flows over it, this is what it looks like. And this is right here in Bombay. It's at Priyadashini Park, right? These are zoantharians, part of my favorite group of creatures called cnidarians, the group that hosts jellyfish, sea anemones, zoantharians, coral, also present on our shores. When you look closer, when you look and literally go down on your knees to look at these creatures, it really changes the game and teaches you a little bit about life as well, yeah? It's about where you stand and it's how you look at things. Perspective changes everything. Another one, what's on the left? They look like little grapes on the intertidal, right? Black grapes, if you see them from far. Go close. The cuttlefish babies. On the shore. On the shore where? Juhu Beach. Anchored to a boat. The rope that a boat uses. Where like you think like hundreds and hundreds of people are there every day. Sorry for the shaky video, but I mean, it was too good an opportunity to not. You can actually, I mean, if you see them in the future and if you visit, I mean, Sarang's photos on Instagram, you'll actually see at even this age, they are firing chromatophores. Changing color is a sign of future defense and camouflage. This is what a beautiful another illustration by Jess. What does traveling in your backyard look like? It kind of is like a giant jigsaw puzzle. It pieces your life together. It tells you where you live. When I was working for Nature in Focus, I attended a talk by a naturalist called Ramit Singhal. He's a birder and researcher. And he talked about this beautiful thing called patch birding, where he says, don't think of looking at wildlife and nature as a huge thing. Think of it as a small thing. And every day, in your daily lives, think of something as a patch. What can this patch be? It can be anything. It can be a windowsill plant you have. It can be a garden that you frequent. It can be a beach where you run at. It can be a small little garden that you pass every day when you're going somewhere. It can be anything. But make that your patch of observation. You don't have to know anything about that patch. You don't even have to save anything in that patch. Just observe it. See how it changes seasons. See how it appears in different kinds of times of day. Just observe it. And I guarantee you that if you observe it for long enough, you will feel an empathy towards it. And now imagine, you have your own patch. Tomorrow something threatens your patch. You might care about it. Now imagine many more of you. Imagine an entire city becoming your patch. When we travel to do forests and stuff like that, they're pristine places. It's easy to think of wildlife in a pristine place, right? We all know. Your network goes off, you can't access your phones, you're in the wilderness. But when you come out of it, the minute your phone starts, you forget. You think, chalo, hum bahar nikal gaye wilderness se. It's not true. The same tree that is in the forest is actually on your office commute as well. You just don't know it. Because a wild space is where a wild animal lives. It has nothing to do with boundaries and it has nothing to do with national parks. And that's the idea of patch birding that Ramit was talking about. He was talking about it for birding, but I would encourage you to use it for anything that you want. Finally, I think it's about the lessons that the intertidal zone has taught, I think, a lot of us in MLOM, Marine Life of Mumbai. And that we all have our arsenals. We think of superpowers, we think of these animals with all these superpowers. But the fact is, we all have our arsenals. We are all superheroes in our own right. Like, for example, when you see those waves crashing at Marine Drive, you've seen those gigantic waves crashing at the rocks, and you'll see those small crabs. And you're like, how are they managing this? But they're managing it because they have a skill, they have a particular evolutionary skill. They have a place where they can put their pincers in a way that they kind of position themselves against the crashing shore. If they tried to run away like an octopus or a brittle star, they wouldn't, they would die. If a deer tried to, instead of running, which is its superpower, try to ambush a tiger back, it's going to die. It has a skill, it can run, it should run. Similarly, a tiger cannot hunt the way the cheetah can, right? It will die. The cheetah has to use speed. The tiger has to use ambush. We all have our arsenals. And the main thing I think the intertidal will teach you at the end is how the tide operates, right? It's taught us to respect an intertidal zone. In Juhu Beach, and I would urge you to go, and we'll talk about that, tide pooling. When you're at Juhu Beach, you see the tide coming in, right? You say, abhi tide aa raha hai, let's leave, because the water's coming in. But you can see the water. You're like, ha, there's some time. But in Priyadashini Park, when you do that, and you're like, ha, theek hai, there's more time. But you know the tide flows in from the side. It surprises you. You turn around, you're like, okay, only 5 more minutes. And suddenly you're in chest-high water, and you wade back to land on slippery rocks. The tide reminds you that you are in the wild space. Even when you can see a building, the intertidal zone is a wildlife area. It is a wildlife kind of safari. And it just reminds you to think about it. And at the end of the day, the tide is solid. You know it's going to come in every day. I've really realized that in my whole life, I think, and since I got involved with MLOM, I feel the tide is the only thing that's as reliable, right? It'll never stop coming in. And something is very powerful and comforting about that. Because if you see the tide over a long time, you observe how it moves. When it meets an obstacle, what does it do? It doesn't like cry and kind of, it makes its way. It flows over the rocks. It finds a crevice. It makes its way. And I think that's powerful. Because you know how you say in life, let's go with the flow. And I feel after observing a coast, I think that's not bad advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sejal. So, that patch of observation you speak of is such a powerful concept that I guess most of us even have probably in our own lives, looking out of the window, keeping a tab on the birds or the ants. And to speak about my little patch, I live near Juhu Beach, and I was making a list this morning of all the things I've seen there, and I have seen pods of more than 30 dolphins that come in the winter mornings, and they hang by the fish nets. And the odd thing is that people don't notice it because they're busy taking selfies. So, sometimes I'm like that crazy auntie is like, oh, look, there are dolphins. Because it's such a tragedy of our city when there are 30 dolphins, but we are so busy jogging with our headphones or interacting with human beings that we don't look at the horizon. Then I've seen sea snake, cobra, crate, Russell's viper. These, the other three in images because it's a bit scary to go near them. But they were in a building by the mangrove. Then turtle, there was a brooder's whale, which is written brider's whale or something. Broody's whale that was washed ashore once. Then we also had two ships. I know they are not marine life, but they were huge. And throngs of porpita, which I see people with chappals throwing back. Yes, they're beautiful. And I think I met my soulmate who was a dolphin once on the beach. So, living in Bombay we've inherited some kind of a low self-esteem that our city does not have wildlife. Delhi has trees, Bangalore has gardens, and are sort of, we have local trains and we have Antilla or something. We don't really, um, I think it's our failure that we don't carry it on our shoulders, that we also have, as humble as they are, we have our wildlife. And if people can't see it, it's because we choose not to highlight it. So I was so happy when I came across your book on Twitter. When the cover was revealed, I've been stalking your editor since then, and Sarang also. I found you on Google. So I'm so happy to be curating this session, and I want to speak the least out here. So Sarang's patch is literally the whole city. It includes the sky, the sea, the shores. He has a fantastic, what do you call, he has a fantastic observation. So yes, exactly. Great eye, and I don't know how you even, always your framing is wonderful. It shows me the city that, we try to capture in fiction, but we can't always. That magic and that sense of otherworldliness and surrealism that we do feel in Bombay, but for some reason we don't acknowledge it. So I'd like to now let Sarang show us some of his photos.
Can we have the photos? they are just loading the photos.
Okay. Well, we could speak about
Continue our
MLM.
conversation.
Sorry?
We can continue our conversation till then.
Yes, probably. We could speak about marine life of Mumbai, which you all are part of, and there are some people in the audience that are also part of it. It's a. Okay. Well,
So I can speak about like my experience, how it has been so far. I think Marine Life of Mumbai was started by Abhishek, Pradeep sir, and Siddharth Chakravarti, three people, in 2017. Before that, almost none of us had any idea that there is so much marine life in Mumbai. All of us had the same expectation about the shores, the same thought process that, okay, this is all dirty, there's garbage, there's nothing here. There's just some fish caught by the fishermen, and that's it. But I think the first walk at Marine Drive with Abhishek and Pradeep sir, like completely blew our minds. We saw multicolored sponges. We saw different types of fish. We also saw corals, I think, on that day. And, it completely changes your idea of the city because you realize there's so much wildlife in such a extremely dense and populated and polluted city. So despite the pollution, if there's so much, you start to wonder how much more there could be if we could just control the pollution a little further. So that was, I think, once we started, we just couldn't stop. Every time we went for a shore walk anywhere on the city, we keep finding new stuff. And one very interesting thing that I was going to mention anyway was how you keep going to the same places again and again, and you discover new things every time. And the funny thing is that you'll go to the same place for a whole year, and you'll see the same things. Then one day somebody will see something new, and suddenly everybody starts seeing that new thing everywhere else. So it's not about not finding stuff, it's about us not noticing it. It's always there. That's what happened with sea slugs. So, I mean, none of us would have thought that there are sea slugs in Mumbai, right? These are all exotic creatures you find in, I don't know, Southeast Asia or some Bahamas or something like that. But now, after 5 years, I think our team has discovered almost, I think, 50 species of sea slugs in Mumbai, on the shores of Mumbai. No need to dive, no need to go to some fancy place. You just walk on the shore in Mumbai, and you'll see 50 species of sea slugs, which is quite amazing, I think. And I think, yeah.
No, you go and finish your sentence.
No, I was going to say that I think you were also going to speak about the Bombayana sea slug. So
yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good moment.
Yeah.
So we saw, I think it was a Haji Ali. We were on a walk at Haji Ali, and there were a fair bit of participants, and everybody was looking at different things. And then suddenly there's this commotion. So every time so Marine Life of Mumbai has a pet favorite. Most of them do. Like mine is, of course, like I said, the Nidarians, the stingers. I think a lot of the MLOM people's favorite things are sea slugs. Some of which will not even be the size of your fingernail. Like they'll be really tiny things, but they get massively excited about it. Like for example, the first time we saw an Elysia sea slug, I could not see it for a very long time. Like my eye was not trained. They were like, "Oh my God, Sejal, look at it, look at it." I said, "Yes, but where?" So and then they had to put like a 10 rupee coin next to the sea slug so I could see it. And maybe you're all laughing in your minds thinking, haha, she can't see us. But when you come to the shore and we'll show you, it is so tiny that you completely disregard it. Like he said, you just don't notice these things because you're like, "Arey, itna chota hai, to kya hi karega?" But this little thing actually is a solar-powered slug. It has a plan B to survive. If it can't find algae, it can use like a plant, completely like a plant. It can create its own food by photosynthesis. Now, when I heard about that, I was like, "Oh my God, this is an amazing thing." But the Bombayana is that, so at that point, there was similar sort of excitement at this corner where everybody was like, "Oh my God, new sea slug, new sea slug, new sea slug." And everybody kind of huddled around, and there's this beautiful polka dotted, I just should have got the photo as well. There's a polka dotted sea slug. I mean, it looks very retro. And it's a small white thing. It was sitting on one rock there. And the beauty about this creature is that it had been seen in public, of course. I'm sure fishers would have seen it all this time. But it has been seen after 76 years. Abhishek is 76 years, right? Almost. Yeah, and it had not been documented in public for that much time. So of course, then it was called Bombayana. It became a real joke in the team where everybody's like, hey, come to see Bombayana, like that they started saying. And then of course, because taxonomists are sadistic, they're not sadistic, I'm kidding, but they will immediately change the name of something once you learn it. So the minute everybody started saying Bombayana, they changed it to Bombay Anus, which was another joke that nobody wanted to touch. So, but we saw that creature, which was so lovely because even newspapers started to carry it. Like next day there was a headline saying that, a sea creature has been seen in Bombay after 76 years, a sea creature that actually got its name from the city. And these are the moments, right? When you talk about the jigsaw puzzle, these are the things that fit your landscape together, that where you stay, where you come from. So yeah, that was the, but some of these creatures are really like tiny. They are like the size of our like fingernails.
So I think as we go into Sarang's photographs, a question that I ask myself a lot in my writing is how do we view even the Bombayana or Bombayanese sea slug or the flamingos as also citizens of the city or maybe as much inhabitants as we are, because we are all part of the same ecosystem, but we somehow, just speak about the human beings as inhabitants or the original inhabitants. So I don't have an answer yet, but I think Sarang's photographs do a fantastic job of putting it together in a way that our stories still don't.
Yeah, so that's what I attempt to do through my pictures at least. Like that's what the thought process has been for the uh, wide angle shots that I take is basically to keep the animal in the foreground and show the city in the background, so that it hits your mind that, okay, this is a part of the city. This has been around for a while, even though we never noticed it. And they've probably been around way longer than us, and they will be way longer than us in the future. So that's I think the thought process behind shooting those wide angle photos of the animal with the city in the backdrop.
I think also the thing about the inhabitants thing is really interesting as well, because I think we don't think about, like, how we say about wildlife in the forest and all. Like when we go on our walks and we'll never tell people ke ये देखो यहाँ पे इतना plastic है या ये देखो यहाँ पे इतना वो है. It's implied. People are watching. They see like a fiddler crab is literally sitting on a plastic bag and going about his life. And that feeling of empathy is really powerful because of that same feeling of being citizens in the same space. Like you look at a thing and you say, तुम्हारी भी band बजी है, हमारी भी band बजी है. You are also breathing the same air, we are also breathing the same air, but we are here. We are here together and we are here together in this. And that kind of empathy is super powerful. I think that years of traveling in the wilderness will not yield. That kind of empathy has been developed over the last few years.
I also might have the photos on my pen drive. Is that okay? Okay, cool, great. No problem.
Okay.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions, by the way, for Sejal or me?
We are doing the tech.
So Marine Life of Mumbai has at least, I think, a couple of walks every month. It depends on the tides. And so we have to take the walks during low tide. So it depends whenever the tide timings are. So just follow us on Instagram. It's Marine Life of Mumbai. And just wait for the announcement for the walks. The only issue is that the walks get full very quickly, like in 10-15 minutes. So you just have to it's like, as Abhishek said, it's like IRCTC ka tatkal booking.
It's a
You just have
fastest
to
finger first.
be there at the moment it's announced. But now we've done one thing is that we've opened it in 2 slots. One slot is immediately, and the next slot is timed for either like next day morning or later in the day, so you can just try your luck. But what I would also suggest is that just go and explore on your own. A lot of these shows, Juhu Beach, Girgaon Chowpatty, Bandra Bandstand, they are quite accessible. You can also go on your own. You can just observe and document what you see, and then you can share your photos with us, and we'd be happy to tell you what it is. Just be careful if you are going on your own. Know when the tide turns, know how low the tide is, and be safe. That's it.
And to also add to the question, Sejal's book is a good primer. Um,
Oh yeah.
because I wouldn't, it would be sad if we, gave again that authority that only if we go for the walk can we explore our city. I think what the group does really well is it's democratized. Like he's saying, I can share a photo, I can read the book. So it's about taking that onus and doing it at your own pace also. And now to the photographs.
Yeah.
Should we switch off this slide?
I think this is one of the older photos I had, and it's sort of introduced me to the marine life of Mumbai. Although this is not technically marine life, these are flamingos in Navi Mumbai, and it just obviously it was very fascinating to see them this close to the buildings. Basically, there's a lake behind these residential complexes where the flamingos they feed inside the creek, inside the Thane Creek, and there are thousands of them. So a sizable number of them during high tide come to these lakes to rest while the tide is high, and then they go back to the creek during the low tide. So just seeing them fly from the creek into the lake is something I can't explain in words. It's amazing. It's like bunch of missiles just coming down from the sky and landing in front of you. You can hear that sound of their wings. And this image it's amazing to just see them this close to the buildings. And the funny thing about this image is that, or rather these phenomena is that you might think that these buildings are way too close, right? These creatures need more space, which is true. But on the other hand, the existing lakes that are there, the residents of these buildings now have sort of become the protectors of those spaces. So this particular lake was going to be filled up, and a new residential complex and even a golf course was supposed to come here. But the residents of this very building, common citizens like you and me, they filed cases against it because this is supposed to be a CRZ area. They filed cases against it in court, and they actually won the case. It's still ongoing in the Supreme Court, but they managed to stall the infrastructure project, which I think is a huge thing. And this is what Sejal also keeps saying, unless you actually observe these things, these wildlife phenomena, and you understand the value of them, you won't actually go ahead and protect them. So that's the first step, I think. That's what even all of us at Marine Life of Mumbai try to do, is that introduce people to this urban wildlife, get them interested, really get them to care about these places so that all of us can actually help conserve them. Yeah, I think I can. Oh, yeah. This is, can anybody guess where this is? There are some very iconic buildings in the background.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. You can see the Air India building right behind, the Trident Hotel as well. And I think on the left-hand side, you can see the Braben Stadium lights. So that's how close it is to Marine Drive. Can you imagine? And this whole place, it might be difficult to see in the picture, but it is basically what Sejal keeps saying, an underwater forest. It is no different than a forest. And I like that concept because we all have a nice idea of a forest, right? What a forest is. It brings a certain kind of feeling to our eyes, to our heads. That's what the intertidal zone is, but 10 times more diverse. This place, the thing that you see in the center in front is called a sponge. We have a lot of different sponges of different colors on our shores. You can see them everywhere. And also the floor is not flat. It is completely covered with different kinds of animals. Some of them are zoanthids. Some of them are called hydroids. And there is also algae. So this is an amazing, beautiful forest right across Marine Drive. It's a little bit difficult to access, but it's a beautiful place. Any guesses
Yes.
where this is? It's a little difficult to guess, but sorry? Oh, you are a bit close. But this is breach candy. Yes. Uh, so right behind Breach Candy, the road, if you know Priyadarshini Park, this is behind Priyadarshini Park. And what you're seeing is, if you remember, Sejal showed some photos of zoanthids, right? These are those same zoanthids, but they are glowing in UV light. So there's a characteristic of corals. Zoanthids are a type of coral. Uh, they have a particular characteristic that if you shine a UV light on them, they glow at night. You won't obviously see it at daytime. You'll have to see it at night. And I just accidentally stumbled into this thing. Like I knew these creatures exist there. We had seen them during daytime. But one day I thought like maybe, okay, I've read about corals glowing. How about these creatures? And I just took a small UV light with me one night. And I was just completely mind blown by what I saw. And it's just, again, some of the things that are difficult to explain unless you see them with your own eyes. So I tried with my photographs. And this is how they look up close. So the close-up photo that Sejal showed was during daytime. They already look amazing in daytime. But at night, when they glow, this is how they look, and they are right here on our shores. And I think we all need to really conserve them because they look amazing.
Just to add to this,
Yes.
Sarang hasn't formally studied photography.
Oh yeah.
This is all his initiative. Exactly. I asked him what gave you the idea of going and flashing a UV light, you know. This is all his own curiosity and initiative, which is remarkable.
Yeah. So I think for me, thank you. It starts with a idea, like when you see something interesting, you want to make a good photograph of it. It starts with an idea of how can I show this to other people? How can I depict this visually? And then I keep trying different things, and I keep going to the same places, visiting the same spaces, same animals, trying to get that right kind of lighting or the right kind of composition to shoot. Like this is one of them. Uh, this is Juhu Beach, by the way, the rocky part of Juhu Beach. And this is probably now the best shore, I think, for us to see octopuses. We keep seeing them all the time. Not every single time, but we keep seeing octopuses at regular intervals at this beach. That's how we used to think that they are very rare in Mumbai, but now we realize they are not really. It's just, yeah, it's just tough to spot.
Sorry, should we switch off these yellow lights? Are they
Oh, yeah.
disturbing the image? Yeah, can we please switch off these yellow lights? Wow.
Yeah, so this particular octopus has reached a stage called senescence, if I am not mistaken. It's basically a lot of octopuses, after they have mated, they come to the shore to just relax, and slowly they die because it's the end of their life. They live very short lifespans, maybe 2 or 3 years. So one way you can tell is that they start losing color, they become white. Another thing is that they become very sluggish. Usually an active octopus, if you see it for a very few seconds because it runs away. It hides into very tiny crevices even. Sometimes they don't, then you realize that they are nearing the end of their lifespan. And I spotted one such octopus. And unfortunately, if you look closely, there is also a lot of garbage and plastic around it. So I tried to show that reality through the picture.
So I had a follow-up question on that. Many people have seen my octopus teacher, and this is what happens to the female octopus after she gives birth to her eggs. And you highlighted that even the male octopi
Yes.
go through it. Is that true? Octopus?
So they'll not immediately die like the female octopus. She's literally.
You'll have to use your mic.
So the female is literally like that's the end of her cycle. Where after she gives birth, she will die. Like she's also at that point before she gives birth, she's really accumulating a lot of food as well. So to kind of last her through that time. Male octopuses don't necessarily die immediately after, but like Sarang said that they will at some point. Then after that, they will go senile in a way that they will kind of go to the shore, or they will not be as powerful as they otherwise were before, and slowly they will then die.
And
Okay.
thinking about how intelligent they are, it's kind of sad that they live only a couple of
So
years or 3
fast,
years.
yeah. Live fast, die fast.
Yeah. So Sejal showed you babies of cuttlefish earlier, the video of them. These are babies of squids. the squids that are available in the market, the ones we eat. Juhu Beach is the best place to see these babies. They are there right now. If you go during low tide in this month, you'll see, I unfortunately didn't add the picture of what the entire egg mass looks like, but I can show it to you later. They are all over the shore.
They look like bubble wrap.
They look like bubble wrap or even like latex gloves almost. Like they are very jelly-like. And inside those masses, there are hundreds of eggs, and every single egg has one of those. And you can actually see them with your eyes if you go to the shore right now. This is
Again, can someone guess where this is?
location.
How well do we do our buildings?
Hmm. No. This is behind Mahalakshmi Temple, next to Haji Ali. So that the creature you see is called a honeycomb moray eel. It's I think not seen that regularly in Mumbai, so I was very fortunate to see it. So I'm going to say a bit of a sad thing is that this shore doesn't exist anymore. It's been completely reclaimed by the coastal road construction, and this was one of the last walks we had there before the construction happened during the lockdown. So also one reason why it is important to go out and document these places is that we have no idea how long we can actually visit these places. So it sort of becomes a photographic record to have afterwards, and also the photographs also become proof that okay, this is a biodiversity rich place. It has a lot of animals, so if in future if any construction activity is happening, we can actually show people that look, okay, this is not a wasteland, there is a lot of thriving life over here. Sea slugs, just a couple of species, again on the same shore, which is not there anymore, but we also see them in other places like Priyadarshini Park. And I just wanted to add this picture because they look crazy. It's amazing. And they are in Mumbai, right here in Mumbai. So it's difficult to just drive that point home without these pictures. This is Juhu Beach again. This is called a sea anemone. And again, very easy to, not easy I would say, but if you know where to see them during low tide, you can always see them at Juhu Beach. And yeah, I think I would like to end with this one because it's like a regular creature on our shores.
It is regular, even I've seen this. Yes, this. I think I'd like to open it up to a discussion if that's okay with you all. Because I think their work to me raises more questions and conversations than anything else. Like how do we, view ourselves as part of this ecosystem, and why are we unable to acknowledge this intelligence or citizenship of other lives other than our own in our city? So I think it's better if we have a discussion with the audience on these questions.
Anybody has questions?
Has anyone seen something in the city that we did not speak of? Maybe a creature, not just even marine life, maybe a tree, a bird, a snake. I haven't mentioned leopard yet, but yeah, leopards. Anyone with some kind of spotting?
Anything that you've been surprised by that you didn't think would be in the city? Yeah.
Nothing to do with marine life, but yeah, I had gone on a tree walk once. There's this woman called Sananda who takes people on tree walks in Bandra. It's a very typical route. It starts from Leelavati and goes on till a little ahead. And there are jackfruits hanging everywhere, and so it's a beautiful experience. And since then, I took this one monorail ride, and just looking like you're just looking like this all throughout because there's so much going on up there. So yeah, it's very
I think
surreal.
it takes a walk like this, maybe a guided walk wherever,
Yeah,
to just open our
absolutely.
eyes, and then we start noticing things everywhere, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that's it.
There's someone on the last.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I have a question. So during this journey where you saw this inhabitants in the intertidal zones and all, So have you seen any impact of climate change or increasing pollution on them in the recent times? Are they like dwindling, or any, like, are they disappearing from our coasts or something of that sort?
So we've only been exploring this for a very short time, past 5 years. So I think it's too short a time to understand what kind of impact climate change might have. One thing I would like to say is that how the creatures, we've seen how the creatures adapt to pollution. Wherever there is, say for example, there's a lot of sewage, untreated sewage that gets just released on our shores. So around that sewage, the animals adapt to the sewage. So the animals that can't adapt to it die, and the ones that can, they thrive over there. That happens. Then a lot of creatures also use garbage as a part of their houses. For example, there's this worm called decorator worm. It basically creates a tube and attaches anything it can find around the tube as a sort of defense to just cover it. So in Juhu Beach and in many other places, you will find a lot of bits of plastic, coconut coir, or man-made stuff being used by these creatures all along the shore. And that is something, I mean, it says a lot about how much garbage we throw in the ocean.
Also, I think the climate question that you asked, I mean, like he said, there's not enough data to tell us how climate is affecting the creatures. But we do know now that there are more cyclones on this coast than ever before. Like the west coast isn't really primed for these many cyclones. Like in the last year, we had like what, 3?
2 or 3, yes.
Yeah, like big cyclones that, we are not used to that. So when that happens, of course, the coast is also fairly affected. There's a lot of siltation. The rain it continues till November sometimes. Last year, I think it rained until. So these things, I'm sure that they cause some sort of difference to the creatures who use the landscape. But there's no data to validate any of those things in public record.
And if I may add to that, it's a chicken and egg question. Until there's not enough pressure from us, maybe we won't even start collecting the data, because we don't view these as spots or spaces of observation. Like, how is Juhu Beach changing? Just anecdotally, the northern, where the creek divides Juhu and Versova, we actually gained some more beach or land after one of the cyclones. But unless, like the Bombayana slug, unless we don't put pressure or ask these questions, I don't think we will even come across the answers or the information.
Yeah, that's true.
I stay in Bandra, and I was at Lilavati Hospital, parked in a car, and evening 6 o'clock saw so many bats going and roosting on the streets. I was so scared. Then somebody told me that Bandra was full of bats about 80 years ago, and they hold on to the hair. So I hold on to my hair first. I'm so scared. And now I see bats in Almeida Park also when I go and sit there. There are some trees. So it's very scary to see bats in Bandra. And not one, thousands of them are there in the Lilavati Road. It's really amazing. And thanks, your talk was very nice.
Thank you.
Sejal has written a very good article on bats on Monga Bay, India. So you should look it up.
I've started a very strong one-sided relationship with these creatures. It's very one-sided. They don't care about me at all, and I'm obsessed with bats. I was locked in during COVID, and when I spoke about patch birding, it kind of goes there, because we didn't have anywhere to go, right? We were all locked in. So I could only observe this tree outside my house, and that's a roosting site for bats. There are hundreds of bats there, and they are loud. Like fruit bats are like, on any day, it's like a Beyonce concert. Like it's really, they are not stopping. Like it's a constant thing. It's like but I think what happened is because I saw them through the year, because we were all locked in so much. I think what was amazing is that I had so many questions about them. I'm like, monsoon mein, look, Bombay monsoon is legendary. Like the trees, and they are swinging like this. I'm like, how are they holding on? So these things happen. So I'm so glad that you're actually even talking about even the feeling of fear, because it starts like that. It has to start somewhere. It has to evoke something in you. Either it can be fear, it can be delight, it can be wonder, but that can change. So first, we are used to looking for birds in trees. We are not used to seeing like this dark, black, ulta, like worldview is like completely weird. Like what are they doing? But when I did start asking those questions and asked the bats researcher, there were mad things that came out. Like they're the fruit bats, because they're so huge, they can't carry their babies with them. So they all leave the babies in one place, then they go and forage and they come back. And then the bat researcher told me this, I was like a creche? And he was so delighted because scientists will not think like that. He said, yes, exactly like a creche. And it was such a beautiful sort of, that comparison that the mummies are like leaving them in one place, then they'll go and chill, and they'll come back, pick up all the kids and go back to their tree. So these small things are happening outside our windows, right? And these are wild animals. So it was just such a beautiful, like in the monsoon, you wonder how are they okay? And the water going into their noses, what's going on? But their wings become waterproof because they have this secretion that they use, and then it becomes and it just kind of covers it, and it becomes waterproof jackets. And it's such a lovely thing that when you see one creature and you see it repeatedly, and these kind of questions, I can go on for bad, so I'll stop because I'm truly they also have I'm on some watch list in the bat society.
Maybe that's your next book.
Yeah, maybe. I'm obsessed with bats.
Any other observations, questions?
Very close, actually. Ideally, you should go during low tide because the tide recedes and then more of the shore opens up. But then there are three sections of the shore. It's called the upper intertidal, which is the closest to the road, the mid intertidal, and the lower intertidal. That's the scientific terms. So you can start seeing life right from that upper intertidal, and every section has different kind of life. The creatures on the upper intertidal won't go down below; they'll die. The creatures in the lower part won't come up; they'll die. So each creature is adapted to that particular section of the intertidal zone, which is very interesting to see. So, for example, at Bandstand, if you just climb down from the promenade and you look for a flat rock with a lot of green algae on it, we get that particular sea slug called Elysia, which it's very tiny, it's very difficult to spot, but it's right there, right against the promenade. And it eats the algae, stores the chloroplast in its body, and uses it to produce its own food. That's here right in Bandstand.
So also, excellent. So in Juhu also, if you go inside from Granth bookstore, everybody knows where Granth is, right? There's a lane that goes inside. He spoke about the squid babies. At this time, during low tide, and you can just see it online. When you say tide forecast in Mumbai, they'll show you the almost 2 weeks worth of, and anything below 0.5 is good. Anything if you see 0.2, 0.3, fabulous. If you see a minus tide, bounce, so full bonanza will happen. But 0.5 ke niche is a good thing for squid eggs especially. If you go now, in this time, in the next low tide cycle, go in from Granth and start walking left towards the water. So when the water recedes, you'll see these little those bubble wrap things. And just look closer because you'll dismiss them as plastic before you'll be mistaken a lot. It's very unfortunate. There are a lot of plastic looks like animals and vice versa. But they'll be there. So that's a very definite location that you will pakka. And even anemones, you'll see them.
And Juhu is very easy to just walk,
And the
it's not
squirting
difficult, so you
clams
can just
also,
walk.
right?
Yes, and clams,
Squirting
those fountain
clams.
things. Yeah, bivalves, which kind of push out water like a fountain.
Yeah.
So all
Juhu
of
is
that
the
you'll see.
best
out
place.
water.
To
Juhu is
do.
really easy because there's a sandy thing, there's a muddy patch next to the jetty, and beyond the jetty, there's a rocky shore. So you can do whatever you want. You can choose what you want to do.
So now that construction has started at Haji Ali, do you still go for walks in that?
Yeah, surprisingly, so
semi-concrete.
we still go, not as regularly as we used to, but we still go and we still see the same kind of life there so far. It is adapting, but then things are also changing. Half of that shore is gone. Then there have been some restrictions as well because of the construction, like people don't let you shoot or something like that. So yeah, but we are hopeful that once everything settles down, once the construction is completely done, the life will come back the same way it was before, hopefully.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so just so you know, the next set of low tides will be between 22nd and 27th November, and they are very good tides. So if you're free, you can go to Juhu Beach or try to join Marine Life of Mumbai walks.
Mm.